Great-grandfather.
Okay, grandfather, you ready?
I guess. I was born in 1929 during the Depression in Baltimore, Maryland, actually in Sudbrook Park. My mother didn't want to go to the hospital, so she called the doctor in the morning. My dad had gone to York, Pennsylvania to do a job, and she called the doctor to say that I was coming along, so he came over to the house and I was born in that White House. 30 minutes later, after I had been born, my mother was on the phone to the local grocery store to order groceries for the day. I have two brothers and one sister. My sister was the oldest, Dorothy Frances Cox, I guess it was. My oldest brother was Noel Jr., and the next in line was Graham, John Graham Cox, and I was the fourth and final child. My sister and my oldest brother were of an age that we really didn't do much together. They were doing things that Graham and I weren't involved with, but Graham and I spent a lot of time together, and we had some friends in Sudbrook Park, and like boys would have gangs, and we would do things together, and I got involved with tennis. We played at Treban's house, and they let us use that tennis court, and so we spent a lot of time, several summers, playing tennis there. Every day it seemed to me like we'd go out and play at least an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours of tennis. So it was a lot of fun, and we enjoyed that. And we used to go into Sudbrook Park, and in the back where that was all woods and all, and we would play in the woods there, and there were streams, and we'd go and try to trap animals, just do things that boys would do. It was kind of stupid when you look back at it, but it was fun. We always traveled in groups together. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of people that we knew, and we got together. But Halloween, we would go and as a gang, and we would ring doorbells and things like that, and maybe a little chalk on a car door or something. We were pretty good kids. I mean, we wouldn't do anything knowingly that was wrong, and we respected the police department. So one year we were out in a gang, and we had done some soaping of some car windows, and somebody had called the police on us. The police arrived, and we saw it from afar that they were coming, and I was a pretty fast runner. I was toward the back of the pack when we first saw the police, and I think in about 3 minutes I was at the front of the pack, and just left and ran home, and everybody dispersed, and that was the end of it. Well, later on that evening, the police arrived at the door at our house, and some of my friends had ratted on me, and my sister answered the door, and she knew the police officer. We all knew they were friendly people in those days, and they wanted to know what it was, and my sister said it was me, you know. So it kind of turned me off the police, and took me up to the police station and gave me a talking to, and let me go, of course. They weren't going to do anything more. But at my age, at that point of my life, that was scary, you know. Police, you know, go to the lockup. We used to go over to. It was Beale. Beale was a car dealer in that area, and they lived there, and they were friends with my parents, and they would invite us to come over and swim in their pool. And of course, I didn't swim, but I just go and I dip my feet around the side of the pool and get them wet. But my brother picked me up. My oldest brother, Noel, picked me up and threw me in the pool. And man, I couldn't swim, and it was I was just thrashing in the water and all. And finally, one of the family said, you know, you can't swim, and they got me out. And I made up my mind, they were never going to throw me in a pool again, and I wouldn't be able to swim. So after I recovered from the trauma of being thrown in the pool, I jumped back in that pool myself and got to the corner, the edge, and I would jump across from corner to corner to try to learn how to swim. And before I left that day, I could swim, and they never threw me in the pool again. Well, my parents were having 4 kids. There's always something going on in the house, and I remember getting out on the side lawn and playing and having fun together. And we had a nice big side lawn in that house, and they never threw me in the pool again. We'd have a sit-down Sunday dinner, and the maid would come on Sunday, Odessa and Laura, who did the cooking, and would cook the food, and then the girls would help serve it and stuff like that. But we always got together as a family for Sunday dinner, which was very nice. It seems like international or national situations always happened on a Sunday because we were there at the table, and we would talk about it. And I remember when Kennedy was shot, and I can remember vividly sitting at that table and having the food. I don't remember what we ate, but I know we had a regular Sunday dinner, and afterwards we sat around and talked, and that was a big thing to have a president shot, and it just sparks a memory in my mind that was when I don't remember the date, but I remember the situation through that Sunday family dinner. Well, and Odessa became, when she first came, she came as a nanny to take care of Graham and me, the 2 older kids. Yes, but she was really to handle the 2 younger ones, because we needed it. And I grew up just with what she said I did. She was the boss of me, and it was a neat thing. And then I remember years later, and she would be back at the house, but she was an important person in my upbringing, really, because she did as much of raising me as my mother did. When she finally left us as a young woman to get married, she wanted to get married at our home, and Mother said okay. And in those days, you know, for a black family to be in a white home was unusual. We had a little community right near Sudbury Park, which was the black community, and they were separated, but they were very, very close there. But we didn't have communication with them. There was a separation between black and white, but to me, I had no separation because I had been raised by her. I mean, she spanked my rear end a number of times, you know, and in fact, probably wiped my butt more than once as a little kid. So I had no. There was no difference to me. It was her skin was different color than mine, but I had no negative feelings toward blacks, and all my life been that way because of her. Well, I went to Pikesville Elementary School, and until the 7th grade, I went all the way through, and school was fun, and I didn't seem to have any problems with school at all. I wasn't the brightest kid, but I didn't have any I never failed, I never had any problem until I finished the 7th grade. And in those days, you went from the 7th grade to the first year of high school. You didn't have an 8th grade. And when I went to high school, it was Franklin High School was the closest one. I went there and I hit a brick wall. I just had trouble with school, learning, remembering. I couldn't memorize anything, and I was really having trouble. And so I went back the next second year of high school in the same grade to take it over again. For some reason or other, in the second year, instead of just reading, writing, and arithmetic and that sort of stuff, but we had a class of shop, and that was only 3 times a week. But when I went back the second year, they put me in shop 5 days a week as a major subject, really. And by the end of that second year, the only thing I had passed, I think, was shop and one other course. It was like I hit a brick wall. I couldn't. And of course, then Mom and Dad became concerned, you know, and they started looking at that situation, and through a picture of my sister, I think, the answer that they gave me anyway, and my parents, was that I grew so fast in those years that standing next to my sister, they could recognize the change in that period of time, that evidently it sapped my strength, and I was not able to absorb. So I was really in trouble. They sent me to St. Paul's School for Boys in Baltimore, which is a very good school. And I was there for 6 months, and I didn't do well at all. So they moved me into Baltimore City Public School. The second part of that year, I was there, and I passed everything but Latin, which I had never had. And I failed the Latin. Well, nobody told me when you fail a subject, you had to go to summer school. They didn't tell my parents or me. I didn't know it. And I went next fall to go for the second year there. And they told me that I had gone to summer school. I had to take the whole course all over again. And that really, I was devastated. I was ready to quit school. So Mother and Dad decided to send me to Fort Union Military Academy in Virginia. And that's where I went. And they felt bad at sending me there by myself. So they took my brother, Graham, out of his senior year at Franklin High School and made him go down there too and take his senior year, which was terrible, really. But he enjoyed it. He had a time because he was really like an upperclassman there, and he had some privileges that I didn't have. In 3 years, then I finished at Fort Union, but it took me 5 to get out of high school. On Greenwood Road in Sudbrook Park, there was a company that was started up making kitchen cabinets. It was something they were starting, and it was like a factory situation. So I started there in the summertime. So right after school, I wanted to go to work and earn some money. So that's where I went, and I was put with a group of 5 guys, I think it was, and we were around actually a glue pot in the middle that had a hose, and you could glue. And we would take strips of wood, 3/4 inch wood, and we'd glue on each side of it a pressed board and we'd make panels to make these kitchen cabinets. And I had the job of when I first started, taking the finished product and putting it over into a press, and then pressing them when we got a group of them, press them tight so that they would glue tight. And I always would try to see if we could do one more than we did the day before. But most of the other guys, you know, if they got what they thought was enough, they'd always have some reason to stop the whole process. And if one stops, we all had to stop. And then about 3 or 4 or 5 weeks into the thing, we find out that they're not putting enough glue on, and when they were finishing the cabinets, they were showing errors, which were, you know, to throw that panel out. And, you know, so they've got to put more glue on. Well, when you put more glue on and you're trying to handle it, your hands get, you know, so gluey you can hardly hold anything. And we'd have to every now and then stop and clean the glue cloth, and we'd clean our hands so it'd be but I always kept them going. I always tried to. I just felt good about doing a little bit more the next day than you did the day before. And it was, when I finished that summer to go to work full time, the man that owned the place, who lived behind us, that's how I got the job, said, you know, if you ever want a job, you know, I'll have one for you if you want it, because of the attitude that I had as compared to most of the others. That attitude was good for me, and I tried to keep that throughout my life, if you do a little bit more than that. So my grandfather was an old-time resident in Pikesville, and he had the mill, ran the mill on Milford Mill Road. I was named for the miller of the mill before my grandfather got involved with it. He had a business that, and I can't remember exactly, but he would go take a horse and wagon and go from Pikesville down to Baltimore to pick up material. He would also grind corn and that sort of stuff at the mill and then deliver that. The mill was not like a normal mill. You would see a great big wooden wheel on the side of the building that the water would come into the top of the wheel, and then the weight of it would pull the wheel down and it would turn around. But this one was different. It was a one that was had come on the market just recently, and it was a turbine wheel, and the mill wheel itself was only about not 18 inches in diameter, and it was onto a metal pole that was about 4 feet high, and that was and the water came actually across the Milford Mill Road. The mill race started on the one side of the road and came across. I don't know how it got across the road, but it did. And then when it was to the other side, that mill wheel was buried in the ground because it had been abandoned years ago and nobody did anything with it. And it was still there, and the school, one of the classes of the school wanted to get the mill wheel and have it, because Milford Mill was named after that mill. So I was one of the ones that they came to ask if it would help. So I found out from my grandfather where it was, and he told me exactly where it was. That's where it was, and it was all grown up in trees and weeds and all, and you couldn't see anything, but he said, there's where it is, and just pointed to it. So we got a couple of the young men from the school, and we went over one Saturday and we started digging for it, and we did hit the top of that wheel, and then we had to dig down about the 4 feet or so to the bottom of it, and we brought out this wheel. It was about that big around, and it was about 4 feet high. The pole was real. The turbine itself wasn't any higher than that. It was, so water would get in it and it would hit it and it would turn. So we dug it out and cleaned it up. I can't remember the name of the memorials on Liberty Road that made granite memorials for monuments for graves. And they sandblasted it for us and got it in pretty good shape. And then I had somebody design the way they wanted it to set so that the school was happy. And then we went over and built that and set that wheel on that platform. And it's over there today at right near the front door of Milford Mills School, that is sitting on top of this concrete platform that they had designed and that we built. And a lot of the boys of the school were involved in that, so it was a big deal for them to do. And it was fun to do. Except that I know the first time I remember when her was, I came home from military academy at Christmas time, I guess it was, and Graham wanted to go up to the school to see his friends that he missed seeing when he was in Fork Union too. So we went up there, and they were having a dance, I think, in their auditorium, I guess it was. And I was standing there not knowing anybody because I didn't go to that school, It wasn't, of course, Graham he was running around seeing all the guys and the gals that he hadn't seen. But I was standing there as a wallflower because I didn't know anybody. That's when she first saw me, I think. I was standing there by myself, Graham flitting around seeing everybody. So that's the first time I remember seeing her. The first time that it really, I felt like she was the gal for me. We went to a party, a Christmas party at one of the houses, because in those days we always traveled around in a group. I mean, we didn't do single dating. You might do, and we didn't do much double dating. It was you went with a group and had fun together. And so we went to this gal's house for, I think it was at Christmas time, but I can't remember. And Betty Lee was a good ping pong player. She would beat all the guys at ping pong. And of course I had to play her too, and she was pretty good. And I wasn't a good ping pong player. And at the end of the time, we were going to sing Old Lang Syne, it was after Christmas because it would be New Year's. And we were all standing around. I knew what was coming, so I made sure that I was close to her when we all sang Old Lang Syne. And so that was the first time that I was I had to kiss her. Everybody was
had to
saying Happy New Year, and that's the first time that I hugged her and kissed her. And from then on, we were, I guess, paired up in a group. And Graham had paired up with a friend of hers that they all knew. So, and then we did a lot of double dating then with my brother. And we'd do a lot of things together. It really wasn't dating so much, we were doing things together. When I pushed her in, I mean, it's not a dumb thing to do, but I did. And she couldn't swim, and she was petrified of the water. And I had to jump in and bring her out. and another fellow jumped in with me, and we got her out. And it didn't hurt her anything except that her curly hair no longer was curly, and she was very upset about that. I think she was more upset about her hair not looking nice. From then on, it just was, we were a team. I was just doing some studying in the scriptures about love and a couple sermons that I heard recently. And to love one another is to want to do what's best for them, not for you, but to do what's best for them. And that means giving up something you might want to do for the other person. And if you really zero in on that, you'll be in good shape. We were married in the church in Clinton, where Betty Lee had been a member, and we had a reception there at the Women's Club. My mother and dad had really given us a very nice wedding. Our honeymoon had rained the whole time, and it was, but for a honeymoon it was fine because we spent time together and we got to know each other. And we've had a good marriage, I think. I mean, I don't know how she would respond to it, but I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. Carol, and then Billy, and then Kathy. We had our children early. That way we've had a full life with our children, really. And it's been trying at times, but it's been good. They've been good kids. We've had a lot of good times together. I think they've all done pretty well. Carol has married a young man that has done very well in his business. But Carol has been a teacher. She has been a very good teacher. She taught for a number of years until having children, and then she retired. But then she was working in the church, and she has, even today, she does that. Mainly Music, which is a wonderful program, and that she had headed up, and they do it at her church, and it's just an excellent, and it's hard work for her. Billy was like me. He went to work and has been at work ever since. He has a good work ethic. He's been a good worker. He's been someone who cares for others. He's a very caring young man, for a man, I think. And that's been great. He picked a very wonderful gal to marry. She's been a really good addition to my family. I've enjoyed having her as another daughter. And Kathy was the youngest, and she's had some troubles along the way, but she's done much better, and here lately she's been very strong, and she's worked, and she's done very well in her work. In her profession, she's been somewhat of a leader in both the organization of the group and in the teaching other people how to do it. She's a medical coder, and she has taught a lot of other people how to code. So she's done very, very well, and I'm very pleased. Because I was a member of Ames Methodist Church in Pikesville, where I had been a member since I could remember. I was taken to that church as a little kid, as a baby, really. And I grew up in the church, and they had a lay witness mission there, which was a group of people from all over different churches, different denominations, really, but it's mostly a Methodist church, I guess. And they came to spend a weekend, a Friday, Saturday, and and then a Sunday morning with different people from the different churches coming and sharing how Christ has affected their life and how they came to know Jesus. And we had never heard that in the church, in the Methodist church. In those days, it wasn't very prevalent that you had to become a believer in Christ. You just were a member of the church. You were a Christian. And they came and told about how Christ came into their life, and they accepted Christ as their personal Savior, and it changed their lives. It made them think differently and act differently. And that was strange to me, because I had been a good person. I'd been to work at church we went as a family. We did that on Sundays. My dad used to, years ago, would have movies on Saturday night at the church for the young people, and that's how we enjoyed one another. We went to church. To hearing these people talk about that was strange. I couldn't understand it. And that they were there on Friday night and all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning, the man who led the thing would take over the pulpit and would speak, and he'd tell about how Christ came into his life. And so I didn't know what it was, except that I knew by Sunday morning, I knew whatever it was that they had, that's what I wanted. I knew I didn't have it at that point. When the fellow gave the sermon, at the end of that, he had an altar call that if anyone wanted to accept Christ as their personal Savior, they could come forward, and all they needed to do was ask for that, and God would give it to them. In fact, I had been singing in the choir, so I was up in the choir loft, and when it came time for us to come forward, man, I just couldn't sit there. I had to get up, and I'd jump over the altar rail so I could kneel there at the altar rail, and this big strapping guy who had been the leader of this group came down and knelt beside me and put his arm around me. Well, I had never had anybody, a man, put his arm around me like that and just very quietly pray for my salvation. And it really spoke to me. And when the service was over, I knew. I said, I want to be like those people. I want to have that kind of. So I started, and I don't know where, but I started getting books that I needed to read from different people who telling about their salvation, how they came to know the Lord, and so forth. And I read the very first one I read was called A Taste of New Wine by Keith Miller. And I don't know where it came from or how I got it, but I read it, and it was speaking about exactly what had gone on this weekend. So that prompted me to start looking for books to read and to read them. And I hadn't done much reading of books prior to that, of any kind of book, really. And I just started reading a lot of books and coming to understand what had transpired in my life that weekend. And it's never been any doubt since then that was the time that Christ spoke to me and got my attention. And it changed my life. I was able to go to other churches and on the lay witness mission and speak about that to other people and give them the opportunity to do what I had done on that Sunday morning. And from there on, it's been no question in my mind that Christ has control of my mind, and that I know what's right and wrong. Not that I'm a goody two-shoe guy and I don't do any wrong because I'm still a sinful person, but I have learned to trust Christ even in the tough periods of my living, to know that He's the one I need to follow, and it's made a difference in my life. It's my attitude to other people, trying to be helpful to other people, and to treat other people in the way that a Christian should treat people, even those that you don't like, that you treat them respectfully, with the hopes that maybe that might lead them to the same relationship that you have with the Lord.